Okay, Kjersti, thank you so much for joining me to put together this episode for moms that are preparing for C-section and want to kind of know what the first 6 weeks may look like, or moms that are new in their postpartum recovery after C-section.
Oh, my pleasure. So happy to be here.
Yeah, and obviously your experience comes like you're a physiotherapist, you work with so many people that have had a C-section or are planning, but you also just had your second C-section a little while ago. And so I thought this would be an excellent conversation to have with you because not only do you bring experience, but you bring like personal perspective as well. And I've always enjoyed talking to you about this topic because you've been open in saying that, wow, like I wish I would have done my first one a bit differently, or I learned a lot from my first one. And so I've used that to prepare differently or recover better from my second one. So I wonder if you start by talking about that, Kjersti. Like, what is it? What do you mean by that? What did you feel like you didn't do right the first time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I actually don't know that I could have prepared better for my first C-section because it was a lot of just unknown. I mean, you don't know how your body is going to respond to a major abdominal surgery. You don't know how your hormones are going to be. You don't know how you're going to feel and how you're going to react to the pain medication. So I think going into it, I felt like, okay, this is going to be a big deal. I'm going to have a baby. Um, and I really, yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have prepared for it because coming out of it, it was just, you have this brand new baby, you're trying to breastfeed, you're trying to figure out your pain control. So it's kind of a little bit of a trial by fire, I honestly think, because everybody's a little bit different. And my
Totally.
recovery, for the first one, it was rough. Like I had a lot of nerve pain and my mobility was really limited. And I think a big part of that was I had a hard time taking my pain medication regularly. I would kind of forget and be like, oh no, I'm going to be fine. I don't need that Tylenol. And then it would be like, oh no, I needed that Tylenol. And now I'm like totally in so much discomfort. And the other thing that I think I could have done better is rested more. And I know
Totally.
I've talked to you about this a lot, and it was a hard lesson to learn. I think as someone who likes to, do a lot around the house, I like to help out. I hate like sitting and asking people to bring me stuff and do stuff for me. And I paid for it for sure. I had a lot more swelling and a lot more discomfort, a lot more bleeding. The bleeding lasted for longer than it should have. Yeah, so like real consequences. And with my second, my mantra was just that I'm sitting on the bed. I'm going to get up from the bed to go pee. But other than that, like people are going to bring me the baby. I know this sounds really like
No,
princess mentality, but
no.
it was like, this is what I need to do to recover faster and to feel better so that I can, be a good mother. And it worked. It was awesome. It actually made a huge difference.
Totally. No, as you're sitting there talking, I was thinking like, isn't that the truth? Because I think not only are we both physios, I think I don't mean to generalize, but a lot of physios are kind of like that. Like I'm strong, I'm tough, I know what to do.
Mhm.
You know, I'm a trooper. I'll get through this. And I definitely can relate after my first vaginal birth. That's totally what I was like. But not just physios. I think anyone that's listening is like, oh yeah, that's me. A lot of women are the same. It's just like, yep, I am the leader of the household. Like I'm the one that plans all the meals. I am the one that plans all the birthdays. I am the one that does all the
Mhm.
shopping. And it's hard to pass that off because no one's going to do it as well as we are. Let's be honest.
That's right.
But it is a pride thing. And I think that there's all sorts of things packaged in there. Not only do you feel like you have confidence in yourself, but like you said, it's really uncomfortable asking for help and it's a pride thing. And I actually have been recovering after a surgery myself, like diastasis repair. And you know what? You talking about that has really stuck in my head too, because I had to really call on everybody around me and just ask, like, okay, people would say, can I bring you a meal? Yes. Instead of, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Mhm.
Yes, you can bring me a meal. Thank you.
Mhm.
Or yes, you can pick up my groceries. Thank
Mhm.
you. Because people want to help, don't they? Right?
And they absolutely do, and just let them help. And
Yeah.
if I would, get up to do something, I would get scolded. Like, Kjersti, go sit down.
Yeah.
Like you do not need to get yourself water. I can get you water. Sit down. But it's just, I think you totally nailed it. Like, I'm definitely the type of person, and you are too, that we do everything
Yes.
around, like we're just
Yeah.
a major part of the family. Right. So when you cut that out, and like, I feel guilty, I feel bad. And at the same time, you have to be selfish in order to do the best thing that you can for your body. And in all honesty, that part didn't last that long. I think your
Exactly.
surgery, Mel, like you're dealing with longer recovery, just to the nature of the surgery. But, for the second C-section, it was really a solid week of like being sternly telling myself to sit on my butt. And honestly, after that, it really paid off, and it did get easier and easier to move around.
Yeah. So it's hard to know whether like it's just a totally different birth experience, but I can't agree with you more that I think that really letting your body just rest and recover is going to help people in the long run. So I definitely think that's a really good thing to point out. And if you could really quickly talk about what advice specifically were you given when you went home from the hospital? Because I think it's, we all know it's a bit scant, what we get, but just the specifics, what were you told?
I was told, for 6 weeks not to lift anything heavier than the baby, and to wait to drive until about 6 weeks, or until I felt like I could move my foot quickly to the brake, or if I needed to have a quick maneuver in the car for safety reasons, that I could do that. But other than that, it was sort of activity as tolerated.
Yeah.
That actually wasn't said to me specifically, but that's kind of how I took it, is like, when you feel like you can, then you can.
Totally. And I think that's where maybe you didn't listen to the first time around. It's almost like you didn't see those signs. You didn't see those signs that your body was saying, Kjersti, a little too much here, right? So you get more pain, you get more swelling. But the second time around, like, you kind of listen to that. And so just given the, guidance we're given, which is not much, you're right. It's like your body's not broken. It's definitely gone through something. So give it some rest, but you still have to get through your day. So I wonder, do you remember back to, because I know you're about 12 weeks postpartum now, but do you remember back to those first few weeks when you were really limited by pain and by swelling? Any specific suggestions you could give to new moms, like how to move easier in bed or how to get out of the chair easier? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Coughing, sneezing with more comfort. Any words of
Mm-hmm.
wisdom?
Yeah, definitely. Getting out of bed, as much as you can, trying to, say I'm lying on my back, bend my knees and try to get my legs kind of rotated off the edge of the bed, and then pushing up with my arms, because you just can't really use your abdominals or your pelvic floor. So using your arms and your legs as much as you can. But even having said that, with that sort of a maneuver, you almost need to use a little bit of your head that is a little bit sore. So it's, expect to be slow and awkward and to look like a whale. And you just kind of have to inch around it and see where your comfort is. But certainly that one. And then sitting on the couch, just making sure you have lots of pillows propped up behind you, or that you're on a fairly high seat, so that, like, you can get in and out easily. You have armrests on your chair so you can push up with your arms. And don't try to sit up holding the baby at the same time. Yeah. That's a bad idea.
Hard, extra work. It's like holding a weight.
You're
right?
just heavier. Yeah, you're just heavier. It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Those are big ones. On and off the toilet wasn't too bad. Showering wasn't too bad. You just walk slow. You just kind of take it step by step, and maybe you have a little.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Have a little. I had a friend after a C-section say she used a shower chair. She just found she had quite a bit of discomfort as well. She had twins too. So she was managing like double the weight, but she definitely found that helpful. I actually just was using mine for almost a month to shower after my surgery. And I think that that's something like, if you're having a lot of discomfort standing, or do you know what I mean? It really is tiring you out, then that's definitely something that I've heard some people find is helpful. What about, and again, I think asking for help is a big one. What about, Kjersti, did you have any issues? I'm going personal here. Like, I think a lot of C-section moms are surprised that like anything like peeing or pooping is in any way affected. Especially like, I mean, obviously, if some have pushed for a long time in an attempt to have a vaginal birth, you can expect that your pelvic floor would be affected. But I think many women that have a scheduled C-section are surprised that anything below that is affected. Did you
Mhm.
have any issues or anything that you'd recommend to new moms that are kind of scared or having issues with peeing or pooing? Anything that you did?
Definitely. And I will say it was different for both of them. I did have, different symptoms with the first one and with the second one. And I think the biggest recommendation would be to drink as much water as you can and just get your bladder emptying regularly. That's also going to help your bowel move more regularly because you're going to be on the heavy pain meds. You're probably most likely going to be constipated.
Mm-hmm.
So, as easy as you can just to kind of pass your stool. That's I took Senecot, I took a stool softener religiously, just to make sure I wasn't having any straining or any cramping. Because what I found actually with both of them was that it was almost like because they've gone in there and basically mucked up all of your insides, your bladder. Are we okay?
Yeah, go back to your bladder.
Right. So your bladder, at least for me, I had almost like spasms because your bladder's trying to learn how to contract again, and you've got to fill it and you've got to empty it, so you almost have to kind of reteach it, and it can be pretty uncomfortable. And then same thing for your bowel too, like you can sort of get these cramps or just sort of trouble emptying because all the synergy of those systems are kind of mucked up. So as regular as you can make that, I think that really helps.
Totally. Something that I guess maybe I was surprised by this, but yet not. One thing I noticed, and because I had both vaginal births, so my surgery has really kind of like helped me understand C-section recovery a little bit more. But one thing I noticed is because of so much, I guess I have a very similar incision, because of so much tension and swelling and discomfort around there in general. When I went to go to the bathroom, I'd sit down on the toilet and just sitting there was like uncomfortable. I couldn't relax. Like my whole
Yeah.
abdomen was tense. And like I would
Mm.
almost be shaky. I'm like, Kate, I totally get how connected my muscles in my abdomen are to my pelvic floor. Like they all work together. So I can just
Mhm.
tell the fact that I'm so tense and so nervous in the front, I can tell that everything won't let go underneath. And it would be like
Yeah.
tinkle, like it wouldn't let go, even just my peeing. I had to sit there and I'd really
Mhm.
have to breathe and I'd really have to let go of my abdominal muscles. That were working so hard just to let the pee out. And same with the bowel movement, same thing as you, is just really staying hydrated, taking this stool softeners. But I would say that's a benefit of working on things like breathing or relaxing the pelvic floor, is just to feel like you can help those muscles
Mhm.
go through something that they're having a hard time with, really, right?
Oh, totally agree. I think the breathing is so key. And I wasn't actually expecting that with my first one. So I knew it was coming with my second one. And when I was just sitting there, I'd be like, it's okay. Like there's nothing wrong. Like
Yes.
this really
Yes.
hurts, but like it's okay. It's just
Yeah.
my muscles. I just need to breathe.
Yeah.
And the more relaxed I can be, the better this is.
Totally. And that's where I think a lot of just the education and helping moms understand that all of this is normal. After there's nothing going on that's wrong with you. This is expected. This is your body going through something big, and just having an idea how to help it is kind of, the best that you can do. What about, Kjersti? Like, did you ever use any support bands or belts like for compression? Because I know that jury's out. Like some people are like, should I use it? Should I not? And there's no research or evidence saying that everyone should wear it and it's going to make everything better. It's going to take away your diastasis. It's going to help your core. But I am a huge fan because I think that not only does it provide mostly comfort, for a lot of people will describe that it gives comfort, therefore they feel like they can move easier. Did you wear one, or Tell me about that. Tell me about your experience with that.
So I wore one with my first, and I actually didn't like it.
Why?
I know
Like,
a
did
lot
you
of
just,
people
no,
do.
this is important though, because I think I love them. So I think I recommend them all the time, but not everybody loves them. What did you not like about it?
You know what? It gave me too much comfort. So
Oh,
I would be like, oh yeah, doing great, gonna go for a walk. I feel awesome. And then I would come home and take it off, and I would just be like, oh, what happened? And it would be so sore because I think I just overdid it. So second time around, I just more did like high waisted, kind of like tighter underwear.
mhm.
And there's like a bunch of different products related to that, but honestly just like something from Superstore that was like a couple sizes bigger but kind of like a higher waisted undie was perfect for me. That was like just right. It felt nice just to kind of have a little bit of a hug, but not like I was, corseted in there. Yeah, that's what worked for me.
I think that's perfect. I have been finding, for me, I get what you mean, because when I take mine off, I'm supposed to wear mine for like 8 weeks, pretty well all day. But when I take it off, it takes my breath away almost. Like my body's a bit in shock. It's lots. So I spend time, and this is where I would wonder, like, if someone's interested in wearing one, but you're also nervous about what Kjersti's describing, is that like when I take mine off, I purposely spend some time walking around with it off, or I purposely spend some time doing some stuff with it off so that my body gets used to it. So it's almost like you have to find the middle ground. And I wonder if, you do part of your walk with it on, stop by the house, take it off, do the rest of the, or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying that everyone has to wear one, but I think sometimes people find it's like, it's great for them. Like I want it, but so I think it's definitely something to ask your care provider about, or try it, because there's so many different options out there. Like you said, there's some that provide a ton of compression, others that provide a little bit of compression. But at the end of the day, I think if it helps you move better, if it takes away fear, then I think it can be helpful.
Oh,
Um,
totally.
Kjersti, what about, this is another one that I think is getting a lot of attention, is like scar massage, scar care. And obviously, anyone that has a new C-section incision, or even in the first few weeks after, is like, I'm not touching that. It's like, don't talk to me about massage. But then they also get to the point where they're like, oh, I never did work on that. I wish I would have worked on it. So, where did you start? I definitely have things that I suggest, and I've learned even more like as I go through this. But I wonder, like, where did you start? Do you massage your scar now? Talk about that.
Yeah, I think I think it's important to just start with light touch on the area. I think you kind of have to desensitize. I think it is surprising how uncomfortable it is, even just to touch the area or have different, like a rough surface touch the area, or even now, like I'm 12 weeks, and if my daughter, my older child, she kind of like her foot like kicks me in the wrong area, and like there's nothing wrong there, but it just doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is important to just start with light touch on the area once the incision is free and clear, everything's, there's nothing open. Just starting with some light touch. And honestly, that's what I did with both times, is just start gently touching the area. And then once that felt a little bit more comfortable and you're feeling a little bit more confident about it, you can start putting a little bit more pressure. But honestly, I wouldn't have put pressure before 6 weeks, just because it didn't feel like the right thing to do for me. And now I would say, I'm 12 weeks now. So right now I'm kind of picking it up a little bit and moving it between my fingers, but I don't love it.
Is it
It's
still?
not,
And
yeah,
that's where
but
I
it's
think,
important. It needs to be done.
absolutely. And I think that you'll notice, like we notice as physios, like sometimes it'll be months or years after that someone comes to see you after C-section, and they'll either have, sometimes they'll be like, my abs haven't felt the same since, like I just feel like I can't connect with those
Yeah.
muscles. Or, you know what? I had a C-section. I wasn't expecting this, but my bladder is kind of weird. Like it either hurts to fill, or it's hard to empty, or I get some
Yes.
leaking. or it's painful to have sex, or I have strange pulling. I will never forget this one girl that said, every time I advance my right leg, it pulls in my scar. So lots of different things can persist with scar tissue, basically, or tissue tension below what you see on the surface, and it can persist. And so that's why, it's such a beneficial thing to do. But I think like what you're saying, Kjersti, is so common for women. And I sure feel like hesitant about my scar and nervous about it. But I think it's just important to point out that you won't wake up on June 15th and all your worries about your scar go away. It's almost like you have to start somewhere. Like you're not going to wake up and all of a sudden be like, I love it. And I love the feeling of it and anyone can touch it. Like it's a process. Right. And so I think that's where you kind of have to meet yourself where you're at and start when you're ready. I find like in the first 6 weeks, this is something I've been working on, is at first just looking at it. That's where I had to start. I had a hard time just looking at it. Everyone's different. Some people are like, I love it from the beginning. Other people are like, I can't look. And so I'd say as soon as you're ready, just look at it and notice how much I found when I first looked at it. Again, it took my breath away and I just felt my body get tense. It looked a bit bloody. It looked a little bit angry, and I had never seen such a big incision on myself before. And so it made my whole body tense. I realized the reaction it created. So I would sit there and I would, like you said, touch around it first, not touch on it. I start with around it, and I would sit there and I would do like a daily meditation where I was just touching my belly and breathing so that I could breathe into all the areas of tension. And after a while, now I can just lightly run a hand over it. I'm at 5 weeks and still just feeling I can barely touch over it, but it's a process. And again, it makes me realize why women after C-section do feel disconnected from that area. But I think long-term, what we see as therapists is that disconnection doesn't really just resolve itself sometimes, right? It's almost like we have to spend time with them years after, just being like, okay, this area is part of your body, and right. And helping them learn to connect with that area again. So I do think it is something that can be started before 6 weeks or before it's totally healed, but it doesn't need to be aggressive, right? I think is what we're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. Even just touching it, like you say, or touch around the area.
Yes.
That's like a big step.
Totally.
Right early on.
Totally. And even just like you hear people talk about different textures. I sometimes I'll use my hands, which are always cold and clammy. I'll get my daughter when I'm reading to her, she'll rub it. I'll take a blanket and rub on it because they all feel very different, and it's all important messaging to our brain, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
Can we talk about, before we hit record, we were talking about how both of us, you by your gynecologist, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, and myself by the plastic surgeon, were advised to use silicone, a silicone strip. I still have a couple areas that are a bit open, so I'm comfortable or shouldn't use it yet, but I know your scar is totally closed and everything. Can you talk about, so I will plan to use it mostly because I'm curious to see, I have a lot of people asking about it. I've heard great things about how it changes like the redness, the appearance of the scar. And so I'm really curious. So I am going to take some before and afters and just see. I don't know exactly how much is going to be related to the silicone. But I know it is something that's often recommended for scar appearance. What's your experience? Are you using it at all?
You know what? I'm not, and not for any particular reason. It's just not something that I've had time to do, to be quite honest. I think if someone gave me a pack of Scaries and was like, hey, put this on, I would probably do it. But it's just not a huge priority for me. And it's not that I don't care about my body. It's just, I just don't mind it. Like it's not, particularly an issue for me how the scar looks. And yeah, to be honest, it's kind of a reminder that I had a C-section there twice, and it looks now different after my first one, which is kind of interesting. And yeah, I think maybe if I was more concerned about the appearance, but it doesn't really bother me.
I love that, because I think that's an important message as you hear about it. And you saying that just makes me think, like, I often talk about, recommend to women that they use it, but not out of the context, like, oh, this looks bad, you've got to deal with this. But I think a lot of people do care, and it doesn't matter whether you care or you don't care, but this is an option. for appearance. And I love that you say that, because I think that that's valid. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It only matters to you. I've had some people, interestingly, say that they felt like the silicone did nothing for them. So again, it's no magic bullet. It's just an option out there.
And I would say I do recommend it to people as like, hey, this is something you could try.
Totally.
And it's been recommended to me by two gynaes now.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like, yeah, like if you want, pick it up and see, have at it. There's no
Totally.
harm in doing it.
Very similar to the support band, right? It's like, this is an option. This might help you. Try it. If you don't like it, that's fine. What about, so we talked about like the importance of rest. We've talked about like managing, discomfort, tips and tricks to move around. But what about exercise? Because I would say probably most people's belief is that I shouldn't do anything but rest until I have my 6-week checkup with my surgeon who's going to discharge me, and then I can start to exercise. And so obviously when we think of other injuries that our body goes through, it doesn't really go like that. We continually progress. And unfortunately, the messaging for postpartum women kind of is that rest for 6 weeks. And then usually you're given the all clear, but that looks different to everybody. Some people are quite happy just chasing their kids around. So their activity levels maybe won't change that much after 6 weeks. But there are some people that are very active that have goals to get back to HIIT class or to run or train for a triathlon or whatever. So I wonder if we could talk about what you did, because I think we both can agree in the first 6 weeks, we think it's valuable to do progressive exercise as much as your body says you can. And maybe if you want to do more too, like it doesn't have to be, you need to do this, but if your body's craving more, that doesn't mean you can't. But wonder if you talk about, you said that for at least a week, you felt like I didn't want to do anything but just lay in my bed. What do you remember at what point you started feeling ready for more?
Yeah, pretty soon after that, to be honest. So definitely the first week was less is more. I'm really making a conscious effort not to move. And the second week was like, okay, well, maybe I can just walk from my bedroom into the kitchen and, sort of walking more inside the house, but still very much paying attention to, did that increase my bleeding? Did I have any cramping after that? And it would always show up at the end of the day. So noticing like, okay, even if it felt okay in the morning, by 4 o'clock, I might be really paying for it. So definitely pacing activities very gradually, just every day by every day, just inching it up a tiny, tiny little bit. And by, I think, the end of the second week, I walked around, we live in a little crescent. So like, say for example, it would be probably walking like 300 to 500 meters and back home
within 2 weeks. So, yeah, totally.
And it was like, awesome. Okay. But I'm not going to do more than that. And then the next day, okay, I can walk, 2 minutes longer. And it was shocking. Like actually I was really surprised by probably 4 weeks. I was probably walking like an hour at a time. Wow. Which I was really happy with. And not feeling totally sore at the end of the day, not taking my pain medication. So those were also indications to me that like, okay, that was okay. If I'm not feeling like I really need to take that Advil or Tylenol again, if I'm not having bleeding or cramping, then that's great. And just sort of day by day. And I definitely noticed, again, probably by that 4-week period that I felt okay doing some body weight movements and like very limited, like probably 5 to 10 reps, maybe like a half of a mini squat, like a little mini lunge, maybe like a little bit of bridging. So some movements to actually get some strength back, because I sort of looked at my side profile in the mirror and I was just surprised I just had no strength in the middle. Just my back, like total sway back, total like rounded shoulders, like belly protruding, and not in a bad way, not in a way that I'm like criticizing my body, more in a way like, oh boy, like I need to get strong. Like this is, I want to be able to have a good foundation for getting back to activity. And so, it's time to do a little bit of strengthening.
Totally. And I think that like you've just listed a bunch of movements that we already do as moms. And I think that's an important thing to point out is like start with things that you already need to like think about the movements you have most hard time with is like getting off the ground as a new mom, getting out of bed as a new mom. Do you know what I mean? Like squatting down to pick up the kids, the baby, the car seat, like all of that stuff. And so it's a good place to start. And I wonder, again, I think this is something that you probably do instinctively because you're a physio and you know this, but I also do spend time with moms in that first period, just kind of understanding that the muscles, like your pelvic floor and core muscles that are usually along for the ride in all of those movements are kind of struggling. Like they've gone through the ringer as far as like stretch during pregnancy. And then whether you had your birth out the front or out the bottom, they've just been through something big. And so they're not coming to the party as well as they used to. And that's, again, you're not broken. That's just what happens after any injury in our body. And so I think that would be another thing that's very valuable to work on in that first 6 weeks and very safe is just getting those muscles to feel like they're back on track again. Like, what does it feel like to let them go? Because we've talked about how much tension we carry as new moms, but then what does it feel like to kind of get them coming on in a coordinated fashion again? So I'm not just like, I don't know, holding everything tight all the time, but those muscles can move again. And when I know how to incorporate those muscles, like when I'm having back pain, when I lift my baby up, I need to get my core to kind of help a little bit there so that my back's not doing everything. Or when I'm sitting and nursing or feeding, I need to let those go a little bit because they're holding tension all day. So I wonder, did you spend some focused time, working on that a little bit too?
Oh, for sure. Every day. Honestly, I think after the second pregnancy and delivery, it was humbling. And it was humbling the first time too. Just, that, like you sort of said there, the quality of the movement and the coordination of the movement.
Yes.
I felt like even if it was 5 repetitions, you kind of have to start from that point because you're starting from 0. And so you can't expect to do a HIIT workout until you can do 3 sets of 10. And at 4 weeks, I'm getting, maybe a 10-second hold of my pelvic floor, 5 contractions, and then we're done. Totally. So, I can't expect my body to, start running or, do cycling or HIIT training until I can, have that foundation. So yeah, for sure. Every day, nothing crazy, but just a little bit of pelvic floor activation, a little bit of TA activation, and honestly, functional movements. Like I said,
exactly.
Little clamshell, little sidestep. Hey, like just sidestepping. That's a good one.
And I think that new moms will listen to this and they'll say like, oh, I don't have time for that. And that's why I think that if you just think about, this is something I've been playing around with right now. I'm just starting to work on that stuff right now myself, is like just getting those muscles feeling like they're back online again. And I'll do it like I'll be in the shower. Like, okay, I'm going to do 5 in standing right now. And after about 5, I'm like, nope, totally lost it. So I'm just going to quit now. The quality's not there. And then later on, I'm laying on my side, relaxing, reading a book. Okay, I'll do a few on my side now. Well, that feels different on my side. And so I always think like, this is what I try to do for my clients as new moms. I'm like, you're not going to need to carve out a bunch of time, but once you get, let's say, the latch with your feed, or let's say you're bottle feeding, as soon as you kind of like how many times you sit there on the couch or whatever, feeding a baby as a new mom, maybe you kind of use that as a time where, okay, I'm going to do a few while I'm sitting. And then when I lay down on the ground with my baby to do tummy time, I'm going to do a few there. Then when I'm in the bath, do you know what I mean? Like just get in a few here and there. And I think that's the value of, it doesn't always have to be in the same chair or in the same position, because our body needs variety. We spend our life in so many different positions. So just get, like you said, a few in here and there, and you'll be surprised how quickly your body's like, oh, I remember these muscles. And you'll start to learn, oh, I need to engage those when I lift this huge car seat. You know what I mean? And my body feels like it's just like a glob of jello. I need to remind those muscles to come on because they are forgetting, right? Or like you said, how hard it is to sit out of the bed. You've seen this too, how many moms like 2 years postpartum are coming in saying, I still roll to get out of the bed, because they haven't reminded those muscles how to work again. Right. And so I think, again, the value of practicing in that first 6 weeks is that you're starting the process without doing a lot of intense exercise. Right.
Yeah. And even just think about one of the things I've been trying to do lately, because we're bottle feeding, is when I bottle feed, I have to spend a couple of minutes just sitting with really good posture.
Yes.
And then I'm going to go back to my bad posture with my neck is
Exactly.
terrible and my shoulders are hunched. But I really, even just sitting upright, like sitting with lovely, like long neck, long spine, feeling space between your chest and your shoulder blades, like that's a really good exercise. And you can
Yes.
literally just sit and do that.
Yes. I remember that. I had a cue, like, when I did the same, I had a cue. It was when I was brushing my teeth. There was something about the toothbrushing that made me think, Kate, stand while you brush your teeth and stand tall. Or I always sang the exact same song to my son when I'd put him down in the crib. And I remember looking at the certain picture above the crib, and that would always be my cue that for this 2 minute song, I have to sit here and I'm going to stand tall. And it would carry over eventually, like to exercise or whatever. But you're right. Nobody expects you to walk around with perfect posture all the time, but you have to sneak those moments in so that your body starts finding that rhythm again. Right. So then I think that one of our biggest take home messages is not that you have to do 7,000 things before your 6-week appointment, but that you don't have to sit there and wait, because if you're probably going to feel, I'm sure you can say this, Kjersti, that at 6 weeks, you're kind of gung ho to start doing more. Like, I'm feeling good. I want to get out. I know one of your goals was to start running again. But just kind of having the insight to know that you're not just going to all of a sudden wake up and be an awesome runner. Like there's components to that. And that's all stuff that you can be working on when you can squeeze it in, so that you set yourself up when you go see your care provider at 6 weeks and they say, okay, you're ready for more, that your body's actually ready for more. And I wonder, anything else, Kjersti, that we haven't covered that you feel is important to know, or that should be, available to women in that first 6 weeks?
Yeah, I would say just that it's so individual. So,
Absolutely.
if you're chatting with your friend and they're like, oh, I feel great, I'm walking, and you're like, oh my God, I'm in so much pain, like that is normal. And don't worry. And if you want to wait until your 6 week because you're really nervous about, like, oh my God, what if I'm going to tear? Don't worry. Like, just wait. There is no rush. It will come. And I think if you're feeling keen and gung ho and you're just dying to do something, start with the basics, because then at that 6-week appointment, you're just going to be able to hit the ground running and you've been kind of building your foundation. And if you can do that, that's awesome. But if not, like, it's going to come. Don't stress about it.
I think that's a great message, because I think at the end of the day, like this is just information that you should take in, meet your body where it's at, and digest it when your body feels ready. Cause you're right. This is your postpartum journey, and you have to do whatever feels right. Thanks so much, Kjersti. I just want to point out, Kjersti also helped me put together, she was featured. I have an online program that is meant to go through all of this. It's kind of meant for the first 6 to 8 weeks postpartum to help give you some tips and tricks to work on, to just meet your body where it's at and slowly progress. It's all about kind of listening to what your body's telling you and moving through at your pace, because I think it's important for, physical and mental health that we feel like we have a bit of a plan, right? Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much, Kjersti, for all of your openness.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was great to chat.